Today's teaching is the word apocalypse. Apocalypse is not the end. No. They told you the word apocalypse means destruction, fire, collapse, punishment. But today's 12:12 portal, we know better, right? They showed you burning cities, falling skies, screaming souls, and said, this is what happens when you disobey. Fear tactics, right? The patriarch loves it. So does the church. But that wasn't the meaning. Not originally. So the word apocalypse comes from the Greek word apokalypsis. It doesn't mean annihilation. It does not mean the end of the world. It means unveiling, revelation, to lift the veil, to uncover what was hidden, to make visible what power worked very, very hard to keep unseen. The apocalypse was never about the world ending. It was about lies ending, right? And that difference matters. Words matter. Because when people believe collapse is coming, they freeze. They panic. They submit. They wait for rescue instead of remembering their power. See, that's not spirituality. That's psychological conditioning. It's propaganda. Fear-based mythology is one of the oldest control systems in human history. That's why I'm here to tell her story. You threaten annihilation, and then you create obedience with the people, right? You promise salvation later, you keep people compliant now, right? That's not God, you guys. That's empire. That's man-made religion. The patriarchal script rewrote apocalypse as catastrophe because an unveiling threatens the hierarchy. That's what's happening now with the matriarchy merges movement and the women coming into leadership roles and the focus on protecting the children. If truth comes out, authority collapses. They don't want that. If people see clearly, they stop kneeling. So the story was flipped around. Okay? Instead of awakening, they taught doom and gloom. Instead of consciousness expanding, they taught judgment. And psychology backs this up, you guys. I learned it in school. I understand now why I went through the trauma I went through, why I went through the courses I took in anthropology and psychology. It all had to make sense to me because I had to figure it out. The human nervous system cannot distinguish between real danger and imagined threat. So when you flood the psyche with end times narratives, you lock people into survival mode. That's what's happening. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Fight, fight, freeze, fawn. You don't get critical thinkers in survival mode, right? You get followers. Critical thinking puts the patriarchal system in bad, bad places. You get people desperate for certainty, desperate for authority, desperate for someone to tell them what's right, what's wrong, who's saved, who's damned, what's what. They can't think for themselves. They get scared. That's how you create religious trauma. And then they back it up and call that fucking righteousness. But today on the 12:12 portal, the world is going to step up with us. The matriarch is emerging. So here's the truth they buried, you guys. Every real apocalypse in his story, not her story, has been a shift in awareness, not a destruction of humanity. The fall of the old gods, the exposure of corrupt rulers, the collapse of false narratives, aliens coming down onto our planet. The narratives, the moment people realize, oh shit, this system only worked because we believed it worked. That's how the system cracks. That's a revelation. That's an awakening. That's the goddess returning through memory, because every apocalypse was weaponized to extinguish the feminine. Unveiling is womb work. Revelation is birth. Only women can birth. Truth comes through the body, the intuition, the knowing, not the throne, you guys. God and goddess symbol, the cauldron, the bell. Patriarchy doesn't fear destruction. It fears exposure. That's why women who see clearly are labeled as dangerous, witches, heretics, crazy. Too much. Because an unveiled woman can't be controlled. Y'all can't do it. You can't control a woman who knows better. Psychology names it very clearly. When suppressed truth resurfaces, the ego panics. systems destabilize. Those invested in power call that chaos. But chaos is just order rearranging itself, you guys. I'm a chaos witch, chaos goddess. This is why trauma healing feels like an apocalypse. Your old identity dies. Your coping mechanisms collapse. Your illusions burn. The world is going through an identity crisis right now. You don't die from this. You wake up from it. Do you understand? Same process, different scale. The apocalypse isn't coming. It's happening internally, collectively, quietly, loudly, all at the same time. Every time someone unlearns shame, every time a survivor names the abuse, faces the demon, dances with it, every time a woman stops apologizing for knowing what she knows, every time someone realizes fear is a leash, that's a revelation. That's your apocalypse. The patriarchal end time story says you're small, you're sinful, you must be saved. The goddess story says you forgot who you are. Let me fucking remind you real quick. Right? One narrative disempowers, the other restores. Patriarchal systems are a hierarchy. The matriarch is a circle. The men and women sit in the circle with the elderly and the children in the center of the circle, and we protect. One teaches obedience, the other teaches sovereignty and love. Here's the part that makes people real fucking itchy-kicky when I talk. If apocalypse means unveiling, then nothing real is being destroyed. You understand that? If apocalypse means it's an unveiling, then nothing real is being destroyed. Only illusions, only lies, only systems that require silence to survive. And yeah, that feels like the end to those who benefited from that order, right? The system is built on the backs of women. Of course, the men are going to be upset when it's exposed. But for everyone else, it feels like a breath returning to our lungs. So when you hear apocalypse now, don't imagine fire raining from the sky. Imagine blindfolds falling off eyes. Imagine truth stepping forward without fucking permission. Imagine the nervous system exhaling after generations and generations of fear. This is not the end of the world. This is the end of the lie that the world was ever meant to be ruled through terror and fear and wars. If the patriarchal systems were natural, they wouldn't need war to uphold it. This is the goddess teaching again, over and over, through language, psychology, through memory, in my bone and breath and my music. Apocalypse is not destruction, it's clarity. Apocalypse is clarity. Clarity always feels dangerous to those who profit from fucking confusion. They want to keep you stuck. They want to keep you stupid. So if these things feel unstable to you, that's a good thing. If old stories aren't feeling good anymore, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. If authority feels hollow, if authority feels hollow, that's a good thing. The veil's lifting. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You can't pretend to go back to a system that isn't working. That's the revelation. That's the apocalypse. And it doesn't end the world. Nah. It gives you your world back, because then you can see it through the lens you were meant to. Right? So think about that. How do you see the world?